Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Roger's Realtime Talkshow event. Today, we are continuing on with our series discussing English politics or the history of English politics and going into some of the stuff that we have going on today. Um, Now, we also me and Mark also have another guest on today that we commonly call Mr. Robot. He's our anonymous guest. So, with that being said, I'd like to introduce you to the show, Mr. Robot, and thank you for showing up. You want to say something to anybody?
Greetings, folks. Appreciate being here.
All
Thank
right.
you for having me, Roger.
Okay. So, with that being said, we were talking last week about colonialism and everything with England. We did some readings talking about the Tories, and we just started getting into the Whigs. And from that,
You finished up on the Boer War last week, and
no,
I just wanted to, I just wanted to say I did
we
like because I grew up
we
in Southern Africa, right?
no.
And
Let me
like,
we didn't finish up on it. So if you
oh, really?
yeah, we didn't finish up on it. So if you want to go back into that, we can go back into that. So that technically that was technically something that we were having a conversation with Bob Dove about, but um
Yeah,
s-
yeah. It's a hectic part of history.
yeah.
I don't
So
feel fully qualified to like. I can recommend a couple of books for people to check out. There's a book by it's called the Courtney novels. What's the author's name again? It'll come to me in a second. But yeah, reading about that time period, man, the lives they led, it is just epic, like mind blowing compared to what we do today.
mhm.
But yeah, it was a hectic part of history and a very inspiring as well for me because you know, a bunch of farmers essentially stood up to the might of the British Army, you know, taking over the place, and they did pretty well. And it's a story of like people banding together for freedom, you know, and you know these sorts of themes are still sort of echoing through our histories today. And I was just saying before, my grandma met Cecil John Rhodes. Um, he was he was one of the sort of, I don't even know what you'd call him, like a,
He was an entrepreneur. Um
yeah,
he
he
was
was one of the aristocratic sort of explorer types, and he set up like institutions and you
mhm.
know, fun, what do you call it, like endowment funds and things like that, and South development funds and whatnot in South Africa. And anyway, my grandma told me a story about how she met him once. And anyway, when he died, he gave his fortune to the Rothschilds, and they with that they set up the Round Table Secret Society, and that eventually broke up into the Council of Foreign Relations and the Institute of British Foreign Affairs, which turned into Chatham House.
Mhm.
And even today, if you look those two things up, they are massively influential in foreign policy and stuff like that. It's kind of like the modern day colonialism revamped. You know, it's done in different ways now, but it's still these same power structures that sort of come from those times.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. So, now that you've said that, let me go ahead and kind of give you a little background of where we are. Now, we ended up with the Tories and between 1680 and 8. They were uh, between 1680s and the 1850s. Um, they contested power against their rivals, which was the freaking Whigs. Okay. Now the Whigs are the ones that we are getting into now, and the Whigs eventually became the Liberal Party when it merged with the the Peelites, and they're the ones that followed the Peels. And then they merged also with the group called the Radicals in the 1850s. The Peelites were a breakaway political faction of the British Conservative Party, and that was between 1846 to 1859. They initially were led by Robert Peel, the former Prime Minister and Conservative Party leader in 1846. Now, the Peelites supported free trade, whilst the bulk of the Conservative Party remained protectionists. Okay, so the Peels later merged with the Whigs and Radicals to form the Liberal Party in 1859. And when you hear the word Liberal Party, back then it's not the same as what we have today. Like here in the United States, we like to call them like the libertarians. You know what I mean? They believe in the Constitution and things like that, constitutional government. So these are like classical liberals before it got all the way it is today. So I just wanted to.
Which party was that? Sorry.
It was the Liberal Party of England.
Okay.
They actually had a Liberal Party.
Yeah.
And they.
As the United Kingdom of England at that time.
Now, I also want to point out what protectionism is. Protectionism, sometimes referred to as trade protectionism, is the economic policy of restricting imports from other countries through methods such as tariffs on imported goods, imported quotas or import quotas, and the various other government regulations. Proponents argue that protectionist policies shield the producers, businesses, and workers of the import and what is it? Import competing sector, yeah, in the country from foreign. Oh, okay, import competing sector in the country from foreign competitors and raise government revenue. Now, opponents argue that the protectionist policies reduce trade and adversely affect consumers in general by raising the cost of imported goods, as well as the producers and the workers in export sectors, both in the country implementing protectionist policies and in the countries against which the protectionists are implemented. I hope that made sense. Protectionism has been advocated mainly by parties that hold economic nationalist positions, while economically liberal political parties generally support free trade. There is a consensus among economists that protectionism has a negative effect on economic growth and economic welfare, while free trade and the reduction of trade barriers have a significant positive effect on economic growth. Some scholars, such as Douglas Irwin, have implicated protectionism as the cause of some economic crises, most notably the Great Depression. Although trade liberalization can sometimes result in large and unequally distributed losses and gains, and can, in the short run, cause significant economic dislocation of workers in import competing sectors. That's what I was trying to say. Now, free trade often lowers the cost of goods and services for both producer and consumer. Now, the radicals were a loose parliamentary political grouping of Great Britain and Ireland in the early to mid 19th century who drew on the earlier ideas of radicalism and helped to transform the Whigs into the Liberal Party. The radical movement arose in the late 18th century to support parliamentary reform with additional aims, including lower taxes and the abolish of censures. I'm wondering, and the abolish of senators. Sinecures.
Signatures.
Okay,
Signatures. As in to sign.
Okay. Now, John Wilkes' reformist efforts in the 1760s as editor of the North Briton and as an MP were seen as radical at the time, but support dropped away after the massacre of St. George's Fields in 1768. Working class and middle class popular radicals agitated to demand the right to vote and assert other rights, including freedom of the press and relief from economic distress, while philosophical radicals strongly supported parliamentary reform, but were generally hostile to the arguments and tactics of the popular radicals. So there must have been infighting among the group itself. However, the term radical itself, as opposed to reformer or radical reformer, only emerged in 1890 during the upsurge of protests following the successful conclusion of the Napoleonic War. Henry Orator Hunt was the main speaker at the Manchester meeting in 1819 and ended in the Peterloo Massacre. Hunt was elected MP for the Preston Division in 1830 to 1832, the root and branch of the reforms which the adjective radicals suggests, and at the time still strongly in concept denoted by reference to all its previous main uses, is the British Constitution, which is not codified or restricted to particular customs, laws, and documents. Now, the rest is the Constitution, but that's even longer than what I just read. So if you guys want to make comments on what I just read, then you can.
I just want to make a comment that the what do you call them, the radicals?
Yes.
They base some of their philosophy off the writings of John Locke, right?
Yeah.
Which developed sort of some of the government and natural right theories about consent of the governed, limited government, right to revolution if a government fails to protect natural rights or become tyrannical. The people have the right then to overthrow. He developed some of those initial ideas, right?
And like it said in there, you got to remember that these ideas were radical at the time.
Also, religious tolerance was another one.
Yep. We were talking about John.
Actually, remember it's only been about 100 years since the Lutheran occurrence.
And these were the people that eventually broke off from England, right? And turned into the colonists of the United States, isn't it?
Well, most of the ideas from these radicals
Well, that didn't happen until
was that of the United States
that wasn't
Constitution.
for at least another 100 years. Yeah, yeah.
Well, they must have just gotten pissed off by getting taxed too much, and they like, screw this, let's go do it over there.
Well, see, a lot of this is happening
So,
like in
something that
1830 between 1830 and
something that amused
1832.
me. Yeah, something that amused me is earlier you were talking about trade restrictions and internal trade markets, and you were talking about what's happening 200 years ago, and I was thinking about what's happening in the EU
Yeah.
at the moment.
Yep.
After all, the EU is just a closed trade market, isn't it?
Well, I'm starting to notice like there isn't really much that's changed in 300-400 years, to be honest with you. I mean, like England has kept. Well, they've changed
Yeah.
names and stuff, but like a lot of this stuff is just transferring from one generation to another, and it's
So true, man. All the problems as well.
Yeah.
It's just like revamping it, like Star Wars. It's just like reincarnations of the same thing.
I mean, all of their issues is pretty. Well, I was pulling up this information and reading it and everything, and I'm like, dude, this stuff is still taking place. It's like there's
I know every time.
every single thing, and
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to point out too, like a lot of this stuff is taking place after the United States was established, because it's talking about like George Field's the Master of St. George was 1768.
Okay.
Now,
Yeah.
the 1830 to 1835 was with Hunt when he was elected as MP and for the Preston Division, and that was in 1830. Now, the Revolution for the United States was in 1776. We had to learn that in school. It was an important date here in the United States.
1776. Yeah.
Yeah. So
The same
you
year
Americans
that
always
the
be
Bavarian Illuminati was formed as well.
1776, when
Yeah.
when all of that was going on, George Washington even made a speech to the public about warning the frickin' Freemasons here in the United States about the Illuminati, believe it or not.
Yeah, right.
He actually did
Right.
make a speech on it.
Yeah, so yeah.
But,
So crazy.
but
Right.
It's
let's stay on.
It's like the Freemasons knew these problems were coming, and they tried to set up a system where you have the potential to be free, but you have to sort of embody it. And then the Illuminati kind of sort of infiltrated them again, along with the crown, and they sort of just basically took over the US again.
Well, the thing about it is like
Maybe.
we were talking about the Jacobites last week, and we needed to talk about the Jacobites. And now the Jacobites movement had a lot to do with Scotland, and Freemasonry was prevalent here in the United States quite a bit, because a lot of the Freemasons. No, I mean, we're talking about back then. I'm saying back when it was taken. They
I'm
were
just saying it hasn't stopped.
they were actually a part of like the United States being formed. So that is established in it.
They actually had some great ideas in the Constitution and all that, and the Bill of Rights.
But to understand that, you'd have to get deeper into the Jacobites, which Mark actually suggested last week that we go through, and I think we should too, because that's another interesting aspect of English government, and what took place there.
Where does this take place? In which country?
In
We
England and Scotland.
England 18th century, 17.
Yeah.
No, earlier.
It was right around in there, because
something crazy. If you want to do any research on that, look up
I also want to talk about the monarch and their power as well.
Now,
like like
was
where
this?
does this authority derive from?
What was the suggestion you was talking about, Mark?
Look up Starkey, Sir David Starkey, is it? The British historian that the famous British historian Starkey. I can't think of his first name.
Okay, so now the monarchy.
I would have to do something.
You
Yeah.
you
Anyway.
you were you were pulling up some information before we started, Mr. Robot. Now
Yeah.
what part of the monarchy do you want to start with?
Okay. All right. Well, let
Yeah.
me pull it up and I'll show you.
Don't get too excited now. Just
I'm trying not to. I'm trying not to.
I know you are. Actually, I know you are.
Just gotta find the right window here. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. Now, just flipping it over here. Now, when I make it full screen, it doesn't go full screen for you guys, does it? Let me see if I can zoom in. No. Well, it doesn't need to be big, but just check this out for a sec. Tell me if you get audio or if you don't get audio. Can you hear it?
No.
You don't hear it?
No. Well, that's 47 minutes, man. I mean, like.
No. I just wanted to show you like 5 minutes.
Yeah. You're going to be able to give us 2.5 minutes maximum. It's gone on YouTube.
I'll play it, and I'll just narrate. Can you guys see it playing?
No, that's what we're
really?
trying to say. It's just like a
Can't
white
see
screen.
anything happening.
Okay, now just give us a breakdown of what you want to say. I mean, your words are just as important to us than freaking a video.
Okay, well, these historians basically, right? They trace down the. Where do I begin? All right, so like the royal ascent and the passing down of their lineage and powers has like a strict rules that it follows, right?
Right.
It's and basically this historian traced back Queen Elizabeth's sort of descendants, and they found out that during the time of King Edward, when he was meant to have been conceived, the king wasn't actually in the country. He was off on a war in France. So she actually conceived with someone in the military there, some archer or something like that. And they wrote down in the logs there that the Edward was actually a bastard. And so according to their rules, he shouldn't have become king then. The king should have passed to another person, right? And he tracked those, like the rightful heirs of the crown down, and it turns out these lords and stuff back in 80 years ago, they moved to Australia, and the rightful king of the British Empire is living in a fucking tiny little house in outback Australia right now. And literally, in this documentary, I wish I could have shown you guys. I'll send you the link later on. But in this documentary, he says, I actually think Australia should be a republic. And the historian guy goes, so you mean you're going to vote against yourself? And he's like, well, yeah, I don't really believe in a monarchy. Which is hilarious. So, like, if they're not even following their own rules, then there's no, like, legitimacy to their authority, in my opinion. And it calls into question, in my opinion, this whole premise upon which they colonize, so like they come to Australia, they say, oh, we have rights here, but they've never signed no treaty with the indigenous people that were there before. They got around that initially by saying, oh, these people are not people, they're animals. Okay. Yeah, it's true. The Aboriginal people were considered animals by law up until 1950, right?
Mark.
And
okay, there you
now that's changed, obviously. But yeah, the fact is that they haven't made a treaty with the native people there. So like, technically, then Australia is still an occupied nation by a foreign power.
Okay,
Is what I'm saying.
so
Illegitimate foreign power.
You got Mark interested. I seen him making funny faces. So,
Yeah.
Mark, you wanna?
I could see him melting.
Yeah, I know. Do you want to say something to that? No, something's wrong with your audio. You gotta talk.
Yeah, bro. Your mic's gone down, bro.
That brand new. There you go. Say something. No, it's not working. You got one of those cool freaking things in your
He's losing it. He's losing it. I can tell.
It's still gone. Yep.
Yeah.
You paid for that shit?
I can see the British Empire crumbling.
Yeah, it could be better.
He's back. He's back.
There we go.
He came in. No,
I swapped over.
Yeah, you're coming in some. Say something.
Huh?
Okay, so there you go. I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Go ahead.
Cool.
Go ahead.
I've totally lost it. Yeah, I'll watch that documentary, I think, and then come back to you on that one.
Okay, that kind of threw you off your game, didn't it?
Yeah. I'll send it to you, man. It's I wish I could have played it. I thought sound come through, but yeah, it's legit. And
well, now what you were saying at the beginning when you were talking about the claims of these people saying that they think that it should be instead of a freaking monarchy, it should be a republic or whatever.
Yes.
Now,
yes. Well,
now this takes me back to what we were talking about last week. Now, last week we were talking about. Now, hold on a minute, Mark. You're getting ready to choke on yourself. No. Last week we were talking about Edmund Burke, and he was another interesting guy. Edmund Burke was, you could tell he was influenced by John Locke as well because of the ways he was, because he was against the freaking way that the Tories were freaking taxing the United States. Okay, he didn't believe in the unfair taxes that England was putting on the colonies. But at the same time, he didn't agree with the freaking revolution when it happened. You know what I'm saying? So you kind of have that correlation there too. I did notice that. And I think.
What was his name? Edmund Burke.
Edmund Burke. Yes. Okay. And
yeah.
Back then, I'm starting to realize there was a lot of that going on, and like with these radicals, you know what I mean? These radicals are definitely the ones who eventually were either influenced by Locke or influenced by the revolution here in the United States, because they all jumped on board of that when, like, Paris even freaking revolted because of the American Revolution.
I see they differed on the fact that, like, Edmund Burke was more for evolution, not revolution. He was favored gradual change rather than radical revolution.
Yeah.
Which probably easier to do.
But it's worth remembering that there was actually a vote in Australia about 20 odd years ago, in which it was not a vote, what do you call them?
He initially
a
opposed
vote
the
without
harsh
any
British
actual
policies
power.
towards the
Yeah.
American colonies, but ultimately disagreed with their fight for independence.
Mm-hmm. Yep, he didn't
And
want him. He didn't want him to be
Yeah.
independent. He didn't want him to become, separate from the British. But he disagreed with like their taxation and stuff like that.
yeah, well, it was, yeah. It sounded like it was pretty unreasonable, huh?
Well, that validates to me what a lot of
It depends on your
you
perspective
Brits
at the
believe.
time.
Like you Brits don't believe that the freaking Boston Tea Party was really legitimate, but now, from what I see from this guy and what he's discussing, there was actually unfair taxation from England when it comes to the colonies.
Well, talking about like reincarnations of
Yeah.
problems throughout the ages, right? Like we have the same problem now, where in the West we have these unsustainable living costs through taxation and inflation and all these artificial things that they sort of impose on the people, which is just a modern form of like sort of slavery or a modern form of like colonialism, and I feel like it's coming to a head again, and we're now at that tipping point of like revolution or evolution. What are we gonna do?
Now, before we go any farther, we did something that we actually did something to Bob Dub. We had her openly admit that she was one of those anarchist scoundrels, and we
I would
had
put
her
myself in
admit
the
we had her admit publicly her shortcomings. So what we need from you is to kind of give us a little background on what your political views are, so that everybody understands that. So
me.
yes, because I know you're a part of the doofs.
Well, basically, I wonder if we didn't have these taxes imposed on the people, how quickly would we flourish? If the people collectively owned the resources of their nations rather than letting foreign corporations exploit those resources for profit and skim it all away, I think like nations would flourish really, really quickly. Like look at what Nazi Germany did after World War One. They went from like completely broke to like a superpower within a few years, just because Hitler made some like radical changes in their system. And I think that can happen again, but it requires for people to take ownership of their own problems and of their own governance. If you take a hands-off approach with your government, the government will take a hands-on approach with you. If you don't think for yourself, someone else will think for you, and they might have a different agenda from what you have. And this is where self-responsibility comes into it. And I think it's important for each individual to have a good sense of self-responsibility, a sense of justice, a sense of, community, so that we can sort of like harness our collective power to govern ourselves, rather than letting these parasitic elites throughout the ages come up and rob us blind, use population control techniques on us, and basically enslave us, because that's what happens when you don't value your freedom. You lose it. And I think it's really important for especially now, for us to look at what unites us rather than what divides us, because the elite will always try to divide and conquer, you know, because that's how they maintain their power. And that's why I'm a staunch anti-monarchist, and I'm not really for centralized power at all. If there is such a thing as centralized power, it should be like by the consent of the governed, and with as little power as possible to make things work.
See,
And
you sound like you're a conservative, to be more honest. Like
well,
a lot of people.
I don't really know what you would
right.
define it as. Like, I think the whole system needs to be fucking redone, basically. And but I think like the US had some good bare bones with what they started with. I think that could be a good template to sort of like work on. But I think we need to reinvent a modern republic that can decentralize power and give people as much freedom as possible to flourish. And I think like we have all the technology. The first steps, I think, towards something like that would be to take control of our own financial systems. You know, like you either use open source, decentralized blockchain technology rather than centralized blockchain technology, or but I think if we go back to like a gold standard or something like that, then the elites will just take over again. So
yeah,
I think we need to just like really have a ground up movement of people that want to just make things work for the people. And unfortunately, everyone's looking for a savior and a leader rather than individuals leading themselves, and that's the problem. When we look for someone else to do it for us, we go down these paths of hierarchy and control. So I think it's important.
We usually get manipulated too, because like that video last week after we had the stream, Mark suggested that I watched it, and it had the young conservatives there in England. And when I watched it at first, it was sounding good. They were talking conservative ideas. They were talking about freaking, morals and values. Oh, I gotta go back in here. Be patient with me. All right. Thank goodness
We can work together. How can we form a community? How can we build that community into a state? How can we turn that state into a nation? Just start again.
I am back. Well, what I was saying with that video though was like it was showing conservative values and everything, and it was good. And it started showing conservative morals and stuff. But then like halfway through, that's when they started getting into this nationalist bullshit. They started like I'm really starting to believe that the Conservative Party has been overran by the frickin' white nationalist groups. You know what I mean?
I disagree. I argue the opposite. I argue that the Conservatives got being wiped over by the left.
Well, that's what
I would say the opposite.
I've been saying that for a long time, and you disagree with me that these nationalists, like white nationalists, are freaking like basically socialists. It's a socialist group, and socialism is a leaning left type of freaking thing. It's not.
No, sorry. When I said socialist, I meant the sort of woke, modern day progressive liberal. That's what I mean.
In woke, that's a whole.
So yeah,
socialism is really just like the broader term for collectivism and cooperation, right? Like
if it's got ism,
but its bastardization is communism. Right, and that's where the problem lies, and that's where the left is trying to pull us, like in terms of the US and stuff right now. Really just globally, they're trying to create like a one world socialist government, but it's not socialism; it's communism. and
Yeah.
it won't work because it's not true socialism,
Actually,
which
it's
would
no,
be
it's corporatism. It's not. It's neither of them. It's technically corporatism. It's being controlled by corporations.
But
Um,
yes, exactly. And I think this whole thing
what
with
do you call
that all
it?
our
You could
countries, the
call.
UK, the United States, and Australia, and Canada, all have this system of red team versus blue team, and like they have this set up to
Oh yeah,
confuse the people because it just they make it really easy for for people that I don't want to say dumb people, but people that like don't care about politics can just like easily choose, right? And they don't
red and
know enough to wisely choose their politicians. So they choose that they get trapped in this red team blue team dichotomy, and I really think like this whole Trump thing has been set up from the beginning, and I think like they've built him into a hero, but he's really going to turn into the Antichrist. You know,
Okay,
it's
now this is about politics. Now
Okay.
let's not go into the afterlife and any of that. So freaking now the one thing that I really do want to say though when it comes to that, I was really astounded when I got halfway through that because like we've been sitting here and we've been talking about conservatism and even with conservatism, with the classic conservatives, they really don't like the freaking individuals. They don't like the rights of the individuals. They're the same way as what socialists are. They want more of a collective, like you're talking there. But
Try to go.
I think
I
socialism could be a
know.
good way to run a society if it was done honestly
it's
from the
really
ground up. Like think of a cooperative enterprise,
well,
right? Like you know,
it's really weird though because like now I'm starting to see the separation between the classic liberal parties and the classic conservative parties, and like what we consider as conservative here in the United States today isn't really conservatism. It's actually liberalism. It's classic liberalism, you know, like small government, moral values is something that was kind of blended in from the conservative side, you know.
they've totally done a
It's a
psyop
still
on the
small.
United
It's
States.
a
So they've
still
turned
small
the
government in
Democrats
the US.
into the new fucking warmongers.
Yeah, well,
You know what I mean?
The Democrats have definitely taken more of a war hawk perspective on things.
But traditionally they were the anti-war movement.
Right.
You know, like
Yeah,
so they've just like flipped the
up
whole
to something like
script in the
1950s.
US.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And you're right,
somewhere around
Mark.
50s,
I
60s,
heard
it
what
all
you
changed.
I heard what you said too, Mark. With the small government, it's yeah, you're right. It's not small government anymore, but that's what they want. The supposed
Yeah,
conservative parties here in the United States. That's what they claim they want. You know.
yeah, but the states, how large has the states grown over the last, I don't know, 20 years? I know in the UK, quite a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I'm keeping my eyes on
Um,
Argentina because I'm curious how this libertarian system could work. You know,
yeah, yeah.
it'll be interesting to see.
It looks like it's going to fall on its face. From what I've
Well,
heard.
yeah, it's unfortunate that like you know he started rubbing shoulders with the WEF, W mother weffers. You
Mm,
know,
Mother whippers. I love how you said that. The mother whippers. Now, when it comes to the liberals, though, the one thing that I did notice about this is like the radicalism. Now, the radicalist groups and stuff like that, that came out of the Whigs. And later on, I'd like to get into that more concerning these radicals because I do believe that these are the ones that did actually bring about freaking what you guys call um, your constitution. And I did find the constitution for the UK, by the way. you guys actually do have one.
Cool.
So
Yeah, we have. It's a collection of documents. It's not just one document.
it's
So,
pretty cool. I mean, it really is pretty cool that you got it. I was wondering about it. You know what I mean? Because to be honest, like England without a constitution is ridiculous. Like freaking, that means you guys are just a bunch of freaking brainwashed. Well, don't get me wrong, you probably could still be brainwashed, but like,
yeah,
but
most of us are.
but like, you know what I mean? Come on, dude. Like you guys have been talking about freaking the parliament and freaking you got a prime minister, you got all of this shit, but you don't have a constitution. You know, I I found
Yeah.
you know.
It's not a single codified document. That's the only issue.
You know,
So if you want to look for the constitution in one central place, it doesn't exist.
well, the
And it's Wikipedia, that is.
it does say that it's not codified. So I mean, it
Yeah.
does say that. So Mr. Robot should be coming back in. We're having the ins and outs. See, this is the love of Jitsi. This is what happens. As long as one person's in here, we can always come back in. So just remember, if you get bounced, come back in.
Yeah. Sorry, I jumped out.
Oh, it's fine. Well, I figured you got bounced like I did. I just had to do this.
My browser crashed.
That's what happens with me. So, Mark is next.
I am next.
Yeah. Well, you're next to get bounced from the frickin' from the
Okay.
From the
No, it's been
multiverse.
stable so far. That's what I'm concerned.
Now you did have some talking points in
Yeah.
chat too, didn't you, Mr. Robot, that you wanted to bring up? You were saying that you wanted to discuss the powers of the monarchy, the ceremonial or real, and then who is the real monarchy, and then why do we listen to them, and from where does these authorities come? And then you got into the land title of Australia, the Aboriginal
Okay,
land.
I sort of touched on it a little bit, but basically, the Australian Constitution, also known as the Commonwealth of Australia Constitution Act of 1900, gives the monarch. Well, actually, it says the Queen, specifically Queen, in there. So I don't know how they're going to update that because you need
It does not.
But it
Actually,
can't get
all the
automatically
UK's
updated,
government
right?
spent
Because it needs a
9
referendum to
billion.
be updated. So it hasn't been
Yeah.
updated yet. It still says Queen.
No,
But anyway,
no. It doesn't need a referendum to write off that. This been happening throughout the UK for the last year, and government spent something like 9 billion pounds on it last year or year before. Just updating these documents, and they don't need a referendum for that change.
Well, I think technically they do because it's not been updated yet. I'm looking at it right now. It still says Queen.
Yeah, I think it's just an administration issue more than anything.
Words have meaning, Mark.
That means
Queen is not a king, and the king is not a queen. So technically, we have no monarch right now.
Indeed.
I don't know.
Okay.
They're gonna have to
On the
convince me.
technicality.
If we go by the words of John Locke, consent of the governed, we haven't had a referendum to change it to king. We have to decide if we want a king.
Now, read that real quick, though, because that
There
right
was a
there stuck out on
referendum.
me. That right there stuck out to me. Like, now read that because you guys are saying the queen and the queen, but read that so that people understand what you're talking about, the sovereignty
Okay,
of the queen.
so here it says, can you see my screen?
I can see your screen, yeah.
Which Yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can see
Yeah.
it.
Okay. It says here, it shall be lawful for the Queen, with the advice of the Privy Council, to declare by proclamation that on and after a day therein appointed, not being later than 1 year after passing of this act, the people of New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, Queensland, and Tasmania, and also if Her Majesty is satisfied that the people of Western Australia have agreed hereto of Western Australia shall be united in a federal commonwealth under the name of the Commonwealth of Australia. But the Queen may, at any time after the proclamation, appoint a Governor General for the Commonwealth. So basically, the Constitution starts off by like naming the powers of the monarch, the Queen, but it doesn't say monarch, which it should have
Yeah.
if it wanted to be ambiguous. But it's very specific, and it says Queen,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And so like here is some of her powers, right? She is able to appoint and dismiss the Governor General, and the Governor General is basically the person in Australia that has her reserve powers. Okay, so the monarch is said to be the only sovereign in the country. Everyone else is not a sovereign being. Okay, they are subservient, or I think I can't remember the exact term, but
Yeah.
so technically she's the only sovereign being in the country, other than the Aboriginal people, who are also technically the sovereign beings there, because they were there before these laws were put in place. So anyway, she also has legislative powers. The monarch has the power to give royal assent to bills passed by both houses in the Australian Parliament. The Governor General performs this function.
There was a question. I think it was when Canada signed through Bill C-18 or C-16. You know, the internet silencing news read thing. I think there's a question about Bill 6 or actually 18, because it's believed that Canada received royal assent between when Queen Elizabeth died and Prince Charles becoming king. There's a question about the legality of Bill C-18, as far as Canada's concerned, because that.
Should send us a link about that. So she also has executive powers. The executive power of the Commonwealth is vested in the monarch and is exercised by the Governor General. This includes the administration of government affairs and execution of laws. The Governor General basically governs the administration of the country and is also able to dismiss the Prime Minister, actually. And on behalf of the monarch, has the power to suspend or dissolve Parliament. So she can literally just go, nah, scrap this, start again if she wants, you know?
No, I
Yeah,
did.
technically, but it's never happened.
No, I did go ahead and grab the constitution, or it's not really a constitution, but it's the equivalence of the Constitution for Canada.
So she can basically dissolve the government, dissolve either of the houses of representatives, right? So there's these sort of, how do you say it, like hierarchy of powers between the people and what happens in the country. And
yeah, I would argue the absolute opposite from you. those hierarchies are there meant to be there for protection. And in the UK, the monarch is there to protect the citizenry. Or the
Well, that's what they tell you, and it is possible. Maybe we're
so it
backwards.
is a level
Can't look
protection
after
if
ourselves. I don't know.
if
But
let's say Australia became fully, I don't know, crazy commie red things, the monarch could actually cut ties. And
Yeah.
okay, but let's say the monarch
women
became
soldiers
crazy
to protect
pedophiles,
the
and then all of a
citizens.
sudden, now they have all the power, and we're still fucking under their boots. You know what I mean? Look at India. They gave
Yeah, it happened since
the
what?
crown. The crown pulled back from India, and they're doing just fine. In fact, they're doing better than the West is right now. They're growing at a massive rate. And
Actually,
so it
East India,
calls into
India's
question
still got a
whether
very big
having a
poor
monarch is a
population.
beneficial thing.
GDP is
They
quite
will
low.
always try and tell you that they're there for your own good. But do we really need a daddy? Do we really need a daddy to look after us?
So I take it you're against the monarchy.
To a point, up to a point. Yeah, you do.
Wow.
And that's why we've got laws, and we've got to make sure that Dad is there to protect us from somebody wanting to kill us. As an
As I
example.
established earlier on, boys, they don't even follow their own fucking rules, right? So, like, the ascendancy, they didn't follow it. It's literally just a power grab amongst fucking powerful people. That's what it is.
Now I do want to point out something else. This isn't just something Robot's saying. There's people that are outright going to frickin' the Capitol and frickin' protesting in Australia right now because of the same issue. Like this is something that
you've seen. But have you been watching? Have you been watching what's been happening in Paris over the last 2 years?
No, I mean they're literally standing out. They're literally standing out outside of government buildings with freaking mics and blowhorns and stuff. And
this is happening all over Europe actually. Paris, mainly, Ireland, Republic of, the Netherlands, I think.
Well, you've talked to
there are protests,
right
especially when it comes to farmers. When it comes to the farmers issue, farmer reducing farm space.
Yeah. And what was you
saying?
There's
like
big issues.
What are you saying, Robot?
I'm just saying there's like a maelstrom of shitstorms, clusterfucks, and everything bellowing down on all of us right now, and it's just like we're in a pivotal time in history. It's gonna get so interesting this year, guys. Like I'm excited, scared, and
that's so interesting.
And looking forward to it at the same time. And it's gonna.
No, I'm not gonna make any. I'm not gonna make any estimations on when it's gonna happen, but I do know there's some shit coming down the pipeline. I've been saying that. I think I've said it at least 50 times since we started this series because there's a lot of things.
There's always shit coming down the pipeline.
Let's make a bet, right?
No bets. Gambling's
illegal. Who thinks that the United States is gonna get nuked this year?
I don't think it's gonna be the United States, to be honest. No.
I mean, so mad.
I do think that. I think it's going to be Australia, to be honest with you, because they're tired of Australia's shit. Like Taiwan, there's this thing about Taiwan.
Look at where the money is coming from. Right? Who's funding the war in Ukraine?
It's
Who's
Australia.
funding the war in Israel?
It's all those Australians down there.
Nah, well, we've sent them a few little buggies and stuff.
Australia.
Nothing like what Biden is doing, mate.
Australia.
Remember, China is Australia's best friend at the moment.
Right. They're funding so much money and putting so much money into Taiwan
and Australia,
right
and
Well, yeah, that's a bit of a scandal as well. The unfortunate truth there is Australia is selling their land to China like no tomorrow.
Well, look at
Uh,
Taiwan. How much money have they invested in Taiwan, and now they're shitting their pants because China could possibly take Taiwan back.
yeah, but at the same time,
Yeah, that's not going
Biden
to
is
happen
saber
anytime
rattling
soon.
and going, if they try and do that, we'll go to war with China.
Yeah,
That's my whole point.
but Putin is a big boy with big balls. To be fair, he knows how to play the game. He knows when to
Oh
say
shit,
something
yeah.
and not just to say
He's
something.
got those battleships off the coast of
It's all
Florida
dead on
right now,
purpose.
man. Like
Yeah, did you hear about
the
that?
U.S. is literally
Yeah,
within shooting
yeah.
range of Russia right now. It's
I
crazy.
I
Yeah,
doubt.
but under
Yeah,
UN training laws,
yeah.
um,
Well, see,
that's not going to happen like that.
that's kind of disturbing too, because we almost had a nuclear war
That
because of
that's
Cuba.
sort of that's sort of Fox News media gossip sort of
Yeah, I know. That's
idea.
that's
Well,
kind of the
To be
stuff
fair,
we're not wanting to
the fact
have a
is, Putin did
conversation
stop his
about.
battleships in Cuba, and they
yeah,
dropped off some missiles there, and now I think they were in Venezuela now, dropping
yeah,
off more missiles there. Um, but Putin is just basically turning up the heat, going, "This is what we feel like, when you guys try and put missiles on our border." And that's why I think
yeah.
Well,
there's
Yeah.
probably
One
a
side, it's a
60%
game,
chance
isn't
the
it?
United States will get.
War is a game. War is a game. If your opponent does something, you match him. Your opponent does something else, you match him.
Biden can't even walk down a fucking flight of stairs, mate. He
War
can't match
is all
shit.
about
I don't know
matching.
hold on.
who's running the show over there.
Hey, you two
Kamala Harris.
guys, we aren't going that route. We're not here to freaking talk shit about Biden or Trump or anything else. We're here to talk about serious politics.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
Let's cut that out.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
we are talking about
that's
serious politics there.
that
But,
was one of the things that I said when I started this. We don't want to go down that path where we're going to be talking this kind of shit, because it's just not healthy. Freaking, you guys are on to something that's a really good conversation, but just leave that alone. Cause
We can do it over on my stream later.
no, you guys do it all the time
Yeah.
in chat.
yeah,
so-
not good for the YouTube algorithms.
Well, it's not just that.
So where
It's just
Um,
here. I
bring us
just
back home, Roger. Tell me where we are with this discussion right now.
no. We were talking about Taiwan. We were talking about Australia, and we were talking about freaking the deals that are going on with China. Now, this actually is a hot topic going on in your region
Canada's
right
just
now.
as bad. Canada's
Well, it's
just
really
as bad,
interesting
and
that the whole
technically, the EU has been pretty poor.
Mhm. So.
Well, Germany and Brussels has been pretty poor now. But yeah,
The whole thing is it's like nobody's taking a look at what's really happening when it comes to Taiwan, because the deal is Australia has crap loads of money invested in Taiwan, all right? And you can say that Australia is feeling threatened by China, but the truth is they're feeling threatened because a lot of their freaking money is going to be taken away if this happens.
That's why I hope that prevents us from just siding with the U.S. if the U.S. decides to fucking go into this like World War III situation.
Yeah, I know.
Because it makes zero sense for Australia to get involved.
It's all investments. It's all investments.
The U.S. doesn't even have the troops to do this. I don't know how they think they're going to get away with this, man. Like, there's no willpower behind it.
Well,
that's why the only outcome here is fucking revolution, boys.
No, you.
People
What was you saying there, Mark? You was trying to say something. You said that.
Did I hear you say "Viva la Revolution"?
Yeah.
You said that war power comes in different forms. Isn't that what you said? Warfare comes in different forms.
Uh,
No,
I
Mark.
don't.
I'm turning Mark into a
Yeah,
radical
warfare
slowly but
comes in different
surely,
forms.
Yeah.
chipping
No,
away at
no.
it.
Now, what do you mean by that?
Okay, not work again. Not work again. Warfare. We've had what, a 50-year Cold War with the Soviets. Um, that's one form of warfare. You don't need to stick troops on the ground to be engaged in warfare these days.
I would like to
If
get
you were talking
Roger's
about
perspective on.
troops,
Okay. So, what perspectives is it you want to get from me?
On how, like compared to the Cuban Missile Crisis to what's going on now, how do you as an American citizen
are you
feel in
open
that
that,
position?
Roger?
Well, the thing about the missile or the Cuban Missile Crisis is it was a pretty touch and go situation. They were on the brink of nuclear war, but at the same
Yeah.
time, they had a president who had the balls to stand up to freaking a foreign power that was
Yeah, and
trying.
you had a press there, and you
Talk
had
about
a press that
reincarnations.
were.
Fucking RFK is almost elected. You know, like
I don't
he's on the.
I don't think he could even fill the shoes that his freaking grandfather had. I'm sorry, but
No, but the fact that he's there is just like
Maybe, maybe.
poetic, you know, in a way. It's just,
yeah.
it's like a reincarnation of these problems again,
Symbol.
like we were talking about.
Now, that right there is it. That could be coincidental, or it might not be coincidental. It depends on how you look at it, because I don't want to get into it too much. You know what I'm saying? But Russia has been pretty interested in our politics. I mean that is obvious. I'm not gonna say that they meddled like a lot of people like to think they did, but
But every
they are
country
interested.
is interested
I,
in everybody
here's
else's
the,
politics these
Right.
days.
Exactly.
here's the deeper
What
truth,
we can
boys.
divide time there for.
Well, I'm not going to personally go into that kind of
Uh,
conversation, is what I'm saying. I mean, I know it's a deeper blah blah blah,
I,
you know, but I'm just saying
I will just say this. I'll just say this, that the surface level stuff we're talking about now is just for the masses. Okay, behind the scenes are the puppet masters. Okay, and these things have been orchestrated across centuries, across millennia. The reason that Bible prophecy is coming true today is because they're making it come true. And you know, like
Look,
uh,
this is the end of times.
and this comes
This
back
is what
down to the
we
fact that there is, wait for it, already a one world government that controls the entire planet. And it is extraterrestrial in
maybe,
nature. And
maybe.
that's verifiable fact. I mean, look at Stephen Greer's archive of interviews. They talk about the world government. You know, like
okay. So now that we've covered the world government, let me tell you guys a little bit about the Canadian Constitution, because I told you I'd found it.
Yeah.
This isn't technically a
Cool.
constitution. It's called the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Now the odd part about
Yeah.
this
Mm.
is this this charter wasn't freaking enacted until 1982. Okay,
can you share it?
I can share the links after we get done, because like I can't switch
Okay.
from tab to tab or it'll screw up on the
Okay.
on the
Yeah,
stream. We're using Jitsi.
I've been the notes.
But here it is.
Mm.
It was enacted in freaking April the 17th of 1982, and was part of the Constitutional Act 1982. Now, the charter was preceded by the Canadian Bill of Rights enacted in 1960, which was a federal statute rather than a constitutional document. And the weird part is the charter was proclaimed in force by Queen Elizabeth II of Canada on April the 17th, 1882. Now, you 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 might feel all horrible and upset about your freaking Australian Constitution being back in 1900, dude. But I mean, I find that horribly funny that Canada didn't have a constitution until 1982. That's pretty pathetic, dude.
What?
Well, it didn't
Yeah.
have its own constitution.
Until 1982.
Then,
Nah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm dead serious. Until 1982.
What was before then?
It was, well, they had the freaking it was preceded by the Canadian Bill of Rights.
Bill of Rights, or the Actual Rights,
and
Canadian.
that didn't get enacted until the
A
1960s.
bill is only people.
That didn't get enacted until the 1960s.
What was before that? That was a British signed document.
Wow.
It was
Before,
probably
what was the previous one?
the previous one was, bitches, you're doing what I'm telling you to do, and if you don't, I'm gonna kick your ass. Act of
And a bit of French in there too, wasn't there?
yeah,
1862.
I think
yeah.
I said plenty of French just now, didn't I? Like, we use the slang term French when we cuss.
Something like that.
My folks are actually up in Alaska right now. They're literally on top of the world. Crazy. The sun sets at like 11 p.m. out there.
Now, later on, man, I'm gonna go through the English Constitution because I think it's probably shady as hell too, because like nobody likes the English, and you know why they don't like them. They're just devious, freaking underhanded, freaking people. Just horrible.
Yeah.
And
We all are.
now, Trudeau actually is mentioned in freaking this too. They start talking about civil rights and shit.
Which surprised me. It likes to be mentioned everywhere.
Like,
Trudeau and civil rights. Yeah, tell the truck drivers that. Yeah.
it says that the British Parliament formally enacted the Charter as a part of the Canada Act of 1982 at the request of the Parliament of Canada. In 1982, the result of the efforts of the Governor of
Who was Canada?
Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau.
So his father was a prime minister at the time, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm. So it's.
I'm just checking who was prime minister.
Pierre
prime
Trudeau.
minister. So it was his father. 1982, you said.
Yep. Don't you find that kind of odd?
Yeah, Pierre Trudeau. So yeah, it was his father.
Now,
yeah.
It kind of stuck out.
His father served a long time. He served from 1968 all the way up to 1984. So quite a long time.
That's 12 years, isn't it?
22?
20,
yeah.
22 years. I do find that kind of fishy, don't you? It's kind of like they have their own monarch. They just hand it off from one to the next.
I don't know. We talk about 1982. What was the term laws in Australia at the time? Or Canada at the time?
How many presidents have they had in Australia, or prime ministers in Australia, since you've been there?
Prime minister in
Mr.
Australia.
Robot?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. Roughly, I don't know. 10. I don't know.
10.
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head exactly.
Do they like just pick them off of trees and shit and eat them and throw them away?
Well, the problem is that the voting system is rigged in Australia, right? So like, um, the way it's set up, it makes it so that it's easy to vote for the two main parties, but it's really difficult to vote for independents. And that way, statistically, it siphons all the votes down to the two main parties.
Mm-hmm.
And that way they keep the two-party system going.
Yeah, same problem with Australia. Same problem in most of the Western world.
Yeah,
If not all the Western world.
it's here in the United States. We call
problem
it the
in Canada. Same problem in the UK.
We call it the electoral voting system, is what it's called here in the United States. Like we have electorates, and they've literally handed all the power over to these political parties for like debating and freaking people running for president. Like if you're an independent person running for president, you have to have between 5 and 15% of the votes in order to freaking debate with the other ones. And the PBS, Public Broadcasting Service, is the one here in the United States that regulates the debates. So they get to say who's allowed in and who's not.
Man, the U.S. system is so corrupt. Like, I was following that voting system so closely last time. I actually coded a script to count the votes myself, and there was more votes than voters.
Now, what was you saying, Mark?
No. Yeah, the major difference between the US and the UK is for electioneering, there is a set cap that any one party can spend. Whereas in the US, there isn't a limit on money, so you can spend as much as you like. The more money you throw at it, the more like.
But this still goes back to what we've been doing here, and like everything that I've been reading about England and your guys' politics is like it's really entrenched with socialism. I mean, because like even with your conservative party, there's really a fine line between the frickin' actual conservatives and the nationalists. You know what I mean? National socialists, like. And it's hard to tell between if these people are actually conservatives or if they're, national socialists trying to convince you to join their group. Like it's
state-run.
It's really
but
hard.
One of the arguments for leaving Brexit, actually, one of the more minor arguments for leaving Brexit was for us to be able to choose what countries we could sign trade contracts with. I believe Barack Obama made a speech about this, where he said Britain would be the third, fourth, fifth people on the list. And when Brexit actually happened, we made contracts automatically with Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and Thailand, China or something. But yeah, we made contracts quite quickly.
Yeah.
So, like I was saying earlier, the EU is a trade bloc in itself, because you can only make trade with countries that the Commission has agreed to.
And don't get me wrong about Brexit either. I think Brexit is actually a phenomenon, to be honest with you. I don't think anything like Brexit has happened in England. You can set that whole deal apart from the rest of it, because that is amazing right there. And I don't think that really is like connected to the Conservative Party. I think that's just people are getting sick of shit going on in England, and they're saying enough is enough. You know what I mean? So, I mean, that's my personal take.
I don't know. There's a lot of people who would like to. There's a lot of people, and a lot of civil servants.
Do you realize
that want to see us back into the Euro?
Do you realize how freaking like anal,
I realise?
retentive the Conservative Party in your country is? Like, they are freaking hardcore
At the
conservative.
moment, especially, yeah, at the moment.
It's
No, at
hard.
the moment, the left wing,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's hard telling between if they're freaking white national socialists or if they're freaking conservatives because
white national, eh? Our Prime Minister is our Prime Minister is Indian or Pakistan? Can never remember.
is he Conservative Party?
Heritage.
Is he Conservative Party?
Yeah. Mrs. Sunak. Yeah, Mrs. Sunak has been our Prime Minister for what? 4 years now? 3 years now?
Mm-hmm.
2 years now? 3?
Well, like I said, I went and I checked out some of the references you gave me on the videos, and then I checked some other ones out, and like
the Conservative is nothing. It's not fucking white socialist. Jesus, white nationalist. That's something that I would expect the BBC to report, say, or Sky News to say.
That young dude that was sitting up there talking, know, is like that was straight up like white nationalist right there, dude. Like, he
Okay, yeah. You shouldn't take everybody's own opinion.
Well,
he
talked a good talk all the way through it, and it sounded good. But then he started getting to, we need to get rid of this whole idea of the individual
the first
rights.
part was
And the moment he started saying that, from that moment on, he broke away from conservatism and started going into.
He is British.
Yeah.
He's British, and he's using a form of satire. There as well.
That's what I'm trying to say.
And some Americans may not get.
No, I got it 100%. That's the reason why I brought it up. He's being subtle, all right, but he's trying to hoodwink you guys into believing he's a conservative when in reality he's a white national socialist. Now, if you want to believe he's a conservative, then that's on you, dude. But that dude is not conservative at all. He is 100% socialist. And
was he not playing devil's advocate? Yeah, advocate. Was he not just playing devil's advocate?
He was talking. He was talking a good talk, but he should have kept his mouth shut halfway through the conversation because he started giving himself away. And that's the one thing that I really enjoy about learning stuff is because, like, when people talk, I actually listen. Okay? And I think if more people would actually listen and try to discern what's being said, they would be able to freaking pick up on what's being said instead of freaking thinking that what they're saying is just what is. Like, I actually learned what National Socialists freaking believe in and how they speak, okay? Now, it threw me off on how hardcore freaking you guys are over in England when it comes to conservative, because I never realized that, like, our concept of conservatism here in the United States isn't even close to you guys. Like, you guys are it's like you guys are like Gatorade freaking compared to freaking crack cocaine, you know what I'm saying? Like,
can you explain it to me? Like, I don't understand.
On the next episode, I was going to suggest on the next episode, just have an entire conversation about this. The difference between US conservatism and UK conservatism.
It's very, very different. And I think we confuse conservatism up with classical liberalism, you know what I'm saying? So,
okay.
I'll be right back real quick. You guys.
I think that is intentionally done by the powers that be. They confuse the words, They sort of like ban people behind a brand.
Now you can understand. Yeah, now you can understand why I don't like marketing people.
Yeah. It's a nightmare. But
Reason.
we need to get our lexicon together, you know, so that we understand what things mean. Because like they're trying to confuse the language, the legal speak, so that people don't know. They think that, oh, I'm a liberal. That means I'm for fucking trans rights or whatever, you know, like they try to push the boundaries with what things mean, and I think it's important for us to come together on places like minds.com outside of the operations of the global surveillance systems, where we can discuss in open forum and come to terms with a lexicon of what words mean these days, you know, in politics.
Yeah, I'm back. I
And
had to run and do something real quick. And what you guys were saying makes sense because I was thinking about that too. Like, we were discussing before about liberalism and kind of diving into that too before this season's done, because I really do think freaking that's the one thing that a lot of us here in the United States have mistakenly misunderstood. Like, we really don't understand what conservatism is. So I'd love maybe next episode.
I don't think you even know what democracy is.
No, actually, from what I've been reading here, we do. It's the other way around. Like, you guys, like what you're saying right there with your country, okay? And what we've been going through with Mark talking about England, like everybody over there, you guys like have this idea that freaking you guys know what democracy is, but you still freaking have like constitutions that can be altered at a moment's notice.
Yeah, that's true.
You
That
know,
is
you know
true.
what I'm saying?
Yeah, but this happens very, very rarely. I know there's a possibility of this, but that's just what the monarch is there meant to be there to do, to protect the state if the state overruns its authority.
No, your monarchy is like the equivalent
And
of
why
the president.
everything needs.
You see, like you're
Yeah.
you know.
We're getting into like more like John Locke territory now, where the powers that be have overstepped their boundaries, and now it's within our rights to kill those motherfuckers.
Oh God.
Isn't it? Like,
He's
he's
a little happy there, a little
We had a
I'm
revolution.
just saying, like, you know, constitutionally, it's within our rights.
Well,
you have a resolution if the powers that be
you have to
abuse
review
their powers, which they are.
You have to review your constitution.
Maybe in the US, but yeah. Remember Henry Charles II, Charles I. Yeah.
Here in the United States, we do have the Bill of Rights that says that, and the Constitution
I haven't
says
even told you.
Yeah. In the US, but you
I haven't even told you what law I operate under, Roger.
You would have to go according to Australian Constitution and.
No, Roger, wrong.
Huh.
I don't operate under Australian law.
Well, I'm just saying.
Because listen. There is no such thing as Australian law. As I have pointed out just before, the lineage of kings has been interrupted. Our government is.
I don't think that's going to help you in the courtroom.
Yes.
There's no treaty.
You're luck in the courtroom arguing that one.
There's no treaty with the native people there.
The indigenous.
I call
indigenous.
the Australian government null and void, and I operate underneath law.
You make the free-man argument, aren't you? You're making the free-man. You're making the free-man argument.
Mr. Robot has always been like the guy that whenever you have him on the stream, he's got Got you jumping.
I am a sovereign being, and I operate under my own free will. No one else's. No one else
Yeah,
can
you're
govern.
making the free man argument.
Well, no, the
Yeah.
Freeman argument isn't as harsh as what Mr. Robot is, dude. Mr. Robot is like the
This
Freeman.
is spiritual almost, boys. You know, like we are all
Okay.
equals in the ether.
Mhm.
You know, we are all sovereign beings unto ourselves. There's no hierarchy in
Well,
spirit.
see, that goes back to what we were saying, though. See, you don't have that in your country. I have that in my country because that's written into my constitution, which cannot be changed. Okay?
Yeah.
You see, that's
Yeah.
the only person that has the right to take these rights away from me is God Himself. And it doesn't matter if you care or believe in God or if you do. That if you don't believe in God, that means nobody has the right to take them away, unless you aren't freaking doing the right thing. Now, if you're out breaking the law and you're doing something that you know is wrong, then the government has a right to take away your rights. Okay, but other than that, if you're doing the right thing and
Good point.
you're a free man, you are 100% free, and nobody can take that freedom from you.
All right.
Okay. Now that doesn't apply to all of
You
these
still have to
other.
pay taxes.
That's true. That's true, and that's why you're always upset because like that's your comeback. It's like you still have to pay taxes.
Tax is expensive.
Yeah. Well, my whole point is like it's the other way around though. You know what I'm saying? And like you guys see all this crazy shit happening in the United States, and you don't understand. It's always been happening here. Okay, it has always been happening.
Yeah.
Okay. The thing is the BBC has finally allowed it to where you guys can see more of the world. Because at one time, your freaking television and your media
I
sources
don't think the
were
BBC are like that.
your
I
media
think
sources were freaking
yeah.
were blocked to where you couldn't see out. They wouldn't even allow freaking British television. They wouldn't even allow British television to be aired in Australia. They had to freaking make 3 versions of Three's Company, dude, so that they could see it in Australia, England, and the United States. Which Three's Company started in England, just so you guys know.
We remember the BBC has split into a lot of private small companies as well now. So your TV programs, Doctor Who, as an example, EastEnders are not being shown, is being shown by companies like BBC Studios rather than the BBC.
Well, now
because the BBC is still a tax-funded organisation. It's a bit of a money laundering issue, and this is the argument about the next TV licence fee. That's going to change contracts in 2027, 3 years away or something.
Something else.
2 years away.
See, and that's also stuff that people don't take into consideration. Like you're looking at things from 2024, but let's go back a little bit and look at how much freedom you really had back in the 1980s and the 1990s. Okay, freaking things have happened that changed a lot for you guys in England and people in Australia too. Like you know, back then you guys were pretty closed in. I watched Doctor Who on PBS. Okay, that's the only place where Doctor Who was permitted to be played. Thames was the one who brought frickin' Benny Hills to the United States. It wasn't the BBC, and I don't know how they pulled that off.
I think by this time the BBC sets off into separate companies. There's about, I think at the moment, there's something like 15 separate companies that run as BBC subsidiaries, but are actually private companies in themselves, and they sell this content off to Netflix and Amazon and whoever. zero.
See, but my
It's all done by these companies.
whole point is
And
don't
the
be
argument at the moment is because the BBC.
don't be fooled by all that because you see new stuff coming out of the United States is what I'm saying. Like don't think that this is all new stuff that's happening. It's
Yeah.
been happening
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
This
For the
country
last
is
20, 30, 40 years.
yeah, it could even go back even farther if you really check even farther back. I mean, this stuff has
Yeah.
been going on forever, and
Yeah.
I mean, like it's always been that way. And like Mr. Robot, he wouldn't understand that because he's still a young buck. You know what I mean? He's well,
Uh,
you're in your 30s still, right?
always is a long time.
You're
It
in
hasn't always been like that.
you're
To be fair,
you,
like
yeah,
before the settlers got there was the Native Americans, right? And
we killed them a long time ago. Don't worry about that.
Mm.
That's taken
yeah,
care
but
of.
what I'm saying is like it wasn't always like that. It wasn't always like that. There
Believe it
was
or not, believe it or not,
change.
believe it or not, there was always something going on. Like freaking, I mentioned it in this episode's about
Yeah.
the Constitutional Convention, dude. There's people that literally got up and walked out. Okay, there's people that refused to sign the Constitution, and I guarantee you, until I said that, freaking Mark and freaking Bob probably never knew that. Okay, because you're not hearing that. You're not hearing. The anti-federalists got up and walked out, and George Mason was the guy who was freaking in charge of the anti-federalists that walked out on the Constitutional Convention. Okay, and him and George Washington were best friends from childhood, and because of the freaking all that shit happening, their friendship was ruined. They never spoke to one another again, and all of that controversy was going on back then, but you know what? You don't hear about it today. Nobody freaking hears about that. They hear about the freaking cherry tree. You know what I mean? George Washington chopped that cherry tree down, and he was so honest. He told them, you know.
Yeah.
So you're hearing the freaking lore and the gossip and stuff that people have passed down that's just a load of crap, but you're not hearing the real story, you know. It's always been there. You know, poor people weren't able to frickin' vote in the United States until frickin' Andrew Jackson became president. Nobody knows. You know, nobody knows
It's
that
only
unless
been what 150 years maybe since poor people or non-free people in the UK got to vote, and I think it's about 150 odd years.
Yeah.
I think. Before then, there was citizens or householders.
But yeah, don't buy into this stuff, or we're just automatically. We just recently got freaking, you know, all crazy and doing stupid shit. Trust me, we've been doing stupid shit in the United States for quite a long time. All right, this isn't something that's freaking new. Trust me. I can.
Ever since the United States was created.
Yeah.
You've had a civil war before. Yeah.
Well, it could possibly happen again. You know what I mean? So with
there's no clear sides though. You know, it's like a mishmash right now with all the border issues and stuff. You know, all the people there.
Well,
I'd be feeling pretty uncomfortable if I was in the US. How are you feeling, Roger, about the whole situation there?
The border shit is just a load of shit. That's our white nationalist bullshit going on right now. That's how freaking Nazi Germany started freaking their whole campaign. It was like speak our language or go home. And you're seeing a lot of that happening here in the United States.
It's a tactic, right?
Yeah, and I don't
But
endorse it. I
hang
don't
on,
agree with
hang
it.
on. Is it because mass immigration issue,
We've had
or
mass
is it because
immigration.
some small cultural issue? Yeah, but it's a continuation of mass. You said we've had, but it's been continuing for last in the UK since Blairism, so since technically '97, and
I'll be.
slowly crept up in the last 10 years. Just moved up extremely fast.
It just seems to me like they've weaponized mass migration. That's what they've done.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
what do
It
you think?
brings it allows
What
for
would you do, Mark? Mark, what would you do if you were president of the United States? What would you do to resolve the migrant crisis border issue?
nuke everything. Nuke everything.
Nuke everything.
Yeah, that's the quickest way. But that's a big question. That's a big question. I don't know.
Well, I think they should definitely stop letting more people in, right? Like, I mean, there's still fucking thousands of people coming in every fucking day. That can't be good.
Yeah, the problem is that if we do get a Labour government in 10 days' time or something, maybe 10 days' time, if it's a Labour government, then expect even more in the UK.
So it's.
Especially if France is going on into a civil war, which it looks like it could well be.
Well,
Are you gonna fight, Mark? If
It looks
you
like
get
then
called up
France
in the
will
draft,
go
are you
into
gonna
civil
fight?
war.
Who, me?
Or in
Mark.
full.
Mark's way
There
too old.
won't be any draft in the UK. The draft in the UK that Rishi Sunak was a gimmick. As soon as
What if there is?
Well, stop.
Would you go?
the announcement was made, the government backtracked and made it voluntarily conscription. How can you have a voluntary conscription?
Yeah, I know what
To
What would you
conscription
do,
is.
Roger? What would you
Well,
do if your name?
it's not gonna happen. Okay, Mark is telling you the truth. Like all of these stories that you're hearing about what's happening over here is just not true.
It's a
Like
gimmick.
it hasn't even hit the news yet. It's not even so. I mean, it's so unfactual that the regular media is not even freaking talking about it. If the draft was to be implemented here in the United States, every news channel would freaking have it. Okay, there's no big cover up on that. Okay, trust me, that's so big that everybody would be talking about it.
Mm.
It is this
Okay, but
this country is so.
I mean, if you want to keep your eyes, if
what would you do?
I'm too old. There ain't no way, dude. I'm a 50-year-old man, dude. Shit.
I would be probably too old. Yeah, I'd probably be too old now.
I mean,
Mate, you're in your prime, Mark.
But,
You're in your prime.
yeah, I'm probably too old now.
you know, I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
freaking
yeah.
now.
I would just give him the good old
Indeed, I have
two
in my
fingers
prime.
to the face.
Now,
No way.
The draft, the whole thing about that though is like, all I'm trying to say is this whole freaking country is so saturated with liberals, man, and I'm talking about the new liberals. Okay, there is no way that freaking they're going to implement the draft without it being broadcast all over. And you'll hear this all
Yeah.
the time on all these streamers talking that stuff, and it's just not true.
There's been an argument. There has been an argument since probably mid 1950s in the UK, to suggest that if the draft continued as it was, I think it stopped in 74, 75 maybe. Yeah, but if it continued at the pace that it was happening at the time, it would bankrupt the country in less than a decade.
The fact is, the United States can't win a war against Russia without
be
doing the
unreasonable
draft.
and
They
Oh,
don't have enough.
dude, no. You go
Again,
look,
depends on what sort of war.
go look at
Depends.
go look at what they did in Iraq. Okay, like technology wise, Russia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no, don't. I mean, I understand Afghanistan is holding freaking Russia at bay simply because of American technology, and that's it.
And no, actually, it could be part of Iran as well, holding Russia at bay, maybe through Indian influence, because Iran is becoming a big
England's
power in
sending
itself.
military there too.
After all, it's Greece.
And you guys have the best ground to air.
And the EU is as well. Yeah.
You guys
So
have
yeah,
you guys have the best ground to air missile defenses and stuff. So you guys, I think
Possibly, I don't know
England,
what
I
modern
think
ICBMs are like.
England has it to where they can track freaking missiles from satellites overhead too. Like they can actually.
no, man.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
supersonic missiles that Russia has. There's no countermeasures.
Actually,
So they've been.
There's no countermeasures to supersonic.
Yeah. I heard
Okay.
both of you. It just got a little kind of confusing there. So now we are at 2 hours, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this short because freaking Mr. Robot is getting rebellious, and I think we have done a really good job of this episode, so I don't want to ruin it. You guys have been great, and I want to say thank you for being here and doing this. If you want to come back next week, you're more than welcome to, Robot. We'll do it on Jitsi again for you. And
Yeah, thanks, boy. I had a great time.
And we can get into this. I think we should discuss liberalism, and I'm talking about traditional liberalism, not this new age stuff. So let's get into John Locke and discuss that.
Yeah. I'd love to. Yeah.
You know,
Sounds good.
and I like I said, I did find information on the British Constitution. I can pull that up and we can go over that, and then maybe go over more of the Canadian Constitution, and maybe discuss a little bit more on Australian, because that's where Locke comes in, is with these constitutions and what's going on there. So
Yeah. I'd like to know how different countries' constitutions are constructed, because we're gonna need to have a constitutional convention soon. So
yeah. Okay, so I am going to end this.
Maybe.
And we will be back here next week. And thank you guys for being here.